Javed Rana is joining us from Pakistan to talk to us about the latest situation in Palestine. Good afternoon, Javed. Thanks for joining us on the program. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Sunday that the intense phase of the conflict with Hamas is nearing its conclusion. What are your thoughts on this statement?
Well, I think this is the typical pattern what Americans have been pursuing in Iraq and more particularly in Afghanistan. That means the reason I think the biggest factor that Netanyahu is saying this, they want to have a skeleton military presence inside occupied Gaza, and then keep an eye on what they consider as the Hamas militant activities. I think that seems to be at the heart of this so-called strategy. But again, will Netanyahu be able to make it happen? I really doubt, because Americans failed in Iraq, Americans failed in Afghanistan. I don't expect that there will be any success story at a time when there is an intense international pressure on apartheid state of Israel to pull out and go for a two-state solution. Now it seems that there are some takeaway points from this so-called 8 months long genocide in Gaza, and those takeaway points are that the apartheid state has a capability and capacity to kill anyone inside Gaza. They have bombarded the residential buildings. They have depopulated Gaza. They have killed 21,000 children are missing, which I suspect have been killed, or many of them have been detained or being tortured by Israel. And then there is if those figures are included, which means now nearly 60,000 people have been killed in Gaza, because 37,000 are already confirmed dead. 10,000 were under the rebels. Now, if you include these 21,000 who are missing, I think this figure maybe go 60 to 70,000. And we already know that nearly 90,000 people were already injured. So I think in that context, we all have also witnessed that the Netanyahu's military has not been able to launch a successful ground offensive. They have a success, a dirty success of conducting a genocide, but at the same time, whenever they try to go into the streets of the Gaza, particularly in the Rapha region, we have witnessed a stiff resistance from the Hamas militant groups. In one of the latest incident, 8 Israeli soldiers were killed. And then the Israeli army straight away refused to operate. They said, we are holding a pause. And Netanyahu said, no, I had not ordered them to go for a pause. And very interestingly, the Israeli army's spokesman, the so-called IDF spokesperson, he said that we cannot eliminate Hamas. That was our confession of their inability to fight with Hamas. And Netanyahu's office had to make a clarification now that he would eliminate Hamas. Netanyahu is living in fool's paradise. I think we have also seen domestically one of his opposition figure who had joined a war cabinet, he has quit. And there is a more and more division within the government. I don't think it will be possible for Netanyahu to hold on at a time when there is some kind of feeling in the West that they are fed up with Netanyahu, because Joe Biden, the US president, could possibly lose election because of the complicity of the Americans providing these all weapons, providing all diplomatic support to the apartheid state, and more particularly vetoing so many UN Security Council resolutions which called for the ceasefire. So in that context, I think, going by again the point that I earlier on raised about the pattern in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, Americans' original plan was to basically hold down by 2024. They had a security agreement with the puppet, the then President Ashraf Ghani, who was handpicked by the Americans. They failed, and at the end of the day, I mean, when the Taliban were entering in the capital Kabul, the Americans and the other Western embassies, they were burning the secret documents, the secret dirty operations they had launched against the Afghan people. And I think similar situation may not be there in Gaza because it is a kind of one-sided genocidal war. But one thing is very clear, that Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other militant groups, jihadi groups, have survived the genocidal war. That is itself something extraordinary. You see, Gaza is a very small territory. It is a 363 square kilometer. It was already cordoned off, blocked from the all side, and after October 7, electricity was suspended. All their resources were suspended. The humanitarian aid was suspended, blocked. People are being starved to death. 1/3 population of 2.5 million is being starved to death. Dozens of people have died simply because they didn't have anything to eat. So nonetheless, they are surviving. They have shown the kind of the resistance that in the modern history I have not seen. You see, by reaching to the Rapha, when they launched a so-called offensive, they took over the Rapha crossing with Egypt. We witnessed that the suspicion that Israel had that Hamas had tunnels and they tried to find those tunnels, and I mean they dug up 50 meter on the ground from the all the side, 2 to 3 side. Nonetheless they couldn't stop Hamas from carrying out missiles attacks, from carrying out rocket attacks deep inside apartheid state. I think this is unprecedented. In case of Afghanistan, Taliban had a supply line. They were snatching the weapons of NATO coming from Pakistani side of the border. Taliban had some sort of sanctuaries inside Pakistan. Afghanistan has a 2,700 kilometer long border. But in case of Gaza, it's all blocked. So it's not less than a miracle that Hamas has survived, and I foresee they would thrive. It is simply a matter of time, because Hamas is carrying an Islamic ideology, and they have a tremendous support among the people in Gaza, those who have survived. But the bigger problem is that why Israel is after these Palestinian children, because they have this very sneaky ideology. Netanyahu has given biblical references saying that killing children is a must, because if they survive, they will grow up and they will pick up arms and they will kill us. You see, such a so-called preventive action is a genocidal war, and it is a Holocaust. But again, the West would not call it, because these are the Palestinians, these are the Muslims. They are subhuman beings, and the Zionists, they are the superiors, so-called superiors.
Okay, now Javed, I just want to hone in on Netanyahu here. He's received backlash from so many levels, including from his own cabinet, and yet he still continues to say that the intense fighting won't be What he said exactly, the intense phase of the fighting against Hamas is about to end. It doesn't mean that the war is about to end. How does he continue to refuse to agree to a ceasefire? Is there a lobby, a Netanyahu lobby, that we don't know about?
I think since Americans are also now looking for some sort of ceasefire, and Israel has also agreed on this, but the problem is there is a kind of situation. They have put in place a timeline that once there is a ceasefire of maybe spanning to the 4 weeks, and after that then there will be negotiations. Before that there will be exchange of hostages, and after that there would be ceasefire. Now Hamas believes that if hostage I would call them prisoners of the war, if they are exchanged before holding the permanent ceasefire, that means the only bargaining chip that Hamas at this particular point of time has, they would lose it, and there would be more aggression. Therefore, I think that is the hurdle, and there is some kind of way out is being found out. But the trouble is that despite the passage of so many weeks, we have not seen anything tangible on the ground. Now, the troubling part is what the opposition inside apartheid state Israel are pointing out, that Netanyahu doesn't have a plan, the day after plan, because he wants to prolong this war. That is where his survival is. And many political pundits believe that once this war is over, Netanyahu's career, political career spanning of decades would also be over. There would be a comprehensive investigation about the failure on October 7. How did Hamas manage to penetrate deep inside apartheid state, the occupied territories, and killed so many people? I think because of those reasons, he wants to prolong it. He's looking for a political survival. And I think it is going to be very difficult for Netanyahu. Again, the point that I want to make, that he wants to maintain a skeleton presence of military inside Gaza. They know that they cannot hold down the grounds. They cannot launch a successful ground offensive. All they can do is by holding air power inside Gaza and holding some sort of symbolic military presence. They will be at their will. Whenever they will get so-called intelligence, they will try to kill remaining members of Hamas, which are still, by the way, going by their own assessment of Israel, they have managed to assassinate maybe the 1/3 of the Hamas fighters. 2/3 are still there. I really still doubt that this assessment is correct. They are still largely, they have survived. They have killed innocent Palestinians and declared 1/3 of them as terrorists, so-called terrorists. I believe they are the jihadis, and they are fighting against an occupation force.
Okay, now, Javed, amid the escalating tensions, there's mounting concern over a potentially broader confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah, raising fears of a full-scale war. What are your thoughts on the likelihood of that conflict, and what repercussions do you anticipate if it were to occur?
Well, I think Hezbollah has put a lot of pressure, and we have also seen Houthis from the Yemen. They are also putting a lot of pressure on the Western countries by carrying out attacks in the Red Sea. And also at the same time, we have seen that there is a surge in retaliatory attack by Hezbollah inside the northern part of the apartheid state of Israel, as a result of which hundreds of thousands of people have already fled from the northern part of Israel. The reason is that since there was a lot of talk about the ceasefire, and Hezbollah put a lot of pressure on Israel to make it sure that this ceasefire, permanent ceasefires, take place. But again, the problem here is that Netanyahu doesn't want that ceasefire to take place. He's trying to play a game. He's trying to befool Hamas. He wants to secure the release of prisoners of war, and after that, he will come up with the conditions whereby that ceasefire may be a symbolic. He wants to retain symbolic military presence inside Gaza and would try to sabotage any stability that is likely to occur once this war is over in Gaza. Now, in a broader picture, we have seen a lot of rhetorics coming from Tel Aviv. They are saying that they have prepared a full-scale war plan on Lebanon. That means, going by 2006 pattern, they will kill innocent people. They will try to divide and cause dissension within the Lebanon as much as they can, because their strategy and policy has always been that kill civilians as many as you can, so that the militant groups could be pressurized by the general population to surrender and to give in, and not to carry out this jihad against the occupying forces. I think in that context, that strategy seems to be, for me, it's a more media gimmick. It's a more kind of the narrative they're trying to build up and telling the West that there's going to be another war. And because Netanyahu is taking more and more concessions, we have also seen that the Israeli defense minister is in Washington, the man ICC has declared as a war criminal. His arrest warrants are likely to be issued after the prosecution concluded that he's a war criminal. He has conducted genocide in Gaza along with Netanyahu. So I think now they are seeking concessions from the West in terms of delaying this ceasefire. But I think the kind of the situation, that political situation that exists right now inside Israel, it seems that it will be difficult for Netanyahu now to make his political game the way he has been doing since October 7.
Okay, Javed, just like the US did in Iraq and Afghanistan, Israel's entered a war in Gaza with vague aims and no strategy. Do you believe Israel hasn't considered an exit strategy from the military phase at all?
Well, if you talk about some of the opposition figures, I think there is a realization that in order to have a peace in the region, there has to be a two-state solution. We have seen some of the very top figures from Israel that they want now a serious negotiations on the two-state solution. I think in case of Netanyahu, he doesn't have any strategy. I mean, that's what the Israeli opposition has also been pointing out, that the Netanyahu doesn't have any day after plan, which means that he wants to continue this plan because now he doesn't want an intense fighting, because that will draw more resentment from the West. That means causing more resentment in West would certainly means that his support base in the West is reducing. That is itself something very extraordinary. So I think in a broader picture, since the Netanyahu doesn't have a day after plan, therefore this is unlikely to be a sustainable effort on the part of Netanyahu by saying that the intense phase of the war is going to be over, but their military presence would be there, because nothing is clear. There is no ceasefire. There is no agreement on exchange of prisoners of war. So it is a pressure from the West, which is trying to basically neutralize, and that is not happening.
Okay, Javed, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.